Today's podcast is brought to you by Blue Canary. The bird has landed on beautiful Bainbridge Island, conveniently located at 499 Madison Avenue. ASE Master Technician Clint Ramsey brings over 15 years of experience, award-winning diagnostic skill, and a desire to reinvent the automotive repair experience. Schedule an appointment online at bluecanary.biz or call them today at 206-451-4220.
I'm Maria Metzler, the Executive Director of Helpline House. The global pandemic has affected us all differently. If you or your neighbors need food assistance, mental health counseling, rental assistance, or Parks and Rec vouchers, please reach out. Helpline House can help in many ways. Find us on the web at helplinehouse.org. It's what we do. Neighbor helping neighbor.
I got something for your mind, body, and soul. I got something for your mind, body, and soul.
You have found the B.I.STANDER Podcast. Now here's your host with the most, Tiny Tim.
What's good, Podcastville? You found the B.I.STANDER Podcast. Today, our podcast is brought to you by Mudwater, Blue Canary, and Helpline House here on Bainbridge Island, the local food bank. Today, I have with me Christian, Ria Kaelin from Provisions Farm. How you guys doing today?
We're doing great.
Doing awesome.
How are you doing, Tim?
I'm super excited to talk to you because I just came across you guys, I think on Facebook, and I recently established a new friendship in Olympia and just got the sponsorship of Mudwater recently. I was like, I got to up my mushroom game. And it seems like you guys have been doing a really cool project, somehow found love, developed this and scaled it, and got into many things like tincture and growing mushrooms and teaching classes. And I want to hear the story. I'm very interested. So
Cool.
I believe what I've read is, Christian, that you got excited about reading a couple mushroom books. And what's the expert out here in Washington State? Paul Stamets?
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, you got it. Yeah, Paul Stamets.
He's an interesting guy. I've listened to his talks in the past. And then did you wind up working with him?
Yeah, we ended up, Ria and I met in Utah, actually, and we knew that we wanted to live somewhere on the West Coast, weren't sure where we were going to go. And then I really fell in love with the area working up here previously, and then took a beginner seminar at Fungi Perfecti in 2001. And that's when I really latched on to the whole idea of maybe coming up here and working with Paul Stamets. And so we moved up here in 2003, in the fall of 2003, in hopes to work with Paul. And about 6 months later, I landed the job with him and worked with Paul at Fungi from 2003 to 2007. And basically, long story short, we met through Ria. Basically, she's been a massage therapist in the area for over 15 years. And when she first started, met some farmers down in the Rochester area that had one of the largest CSA farms, community supported agriculture model of marketing. And we teamed up with them and started our own farm with about 100 CSA members to start. So we knew that we had a market available that we could go into, and we started growing shiitakes, lion's mane, and oysters for CSA farming.
And that was in Rochester, New York?
No, here in Rochester, Washington, just south of Olympia.
I see. I'm sorry. My wife played soccer for Rochester, New York.
Okay.
So she's from the Finger Lakes area and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love it up there too. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So tell me a little bit. You guys are close to a forest too, right?
We're right off of Capitol Forest. We're about 10 acres away from Capitol Forest.
And do you forage there?
We do. We could actually forage. We foraged over 200 pounds of chanterelles right in our backyard. We're on 5 acres here.
Nice.
And a lot of trees here, the Doug firs have, 40, 50-year-old Doug firs on the property. So they have that symbiotic relationship with the chanterelles. And on good seasons, when there's lots of rain, we can really load up right here on our property. It's kind of nice to be so close to the forest.
Yeah, and chanterelles are great mushrooms. I have one recipe called it's a Chanterelle Tart with a flaky crust that I just love goat cheese in it and stuff like that. And so delicious. But chanterelles, I'm near some protected forests here on Bainbridge Island as well. We have the Grand Forest, which is over 400 acres that are just saved for the people right in the middle of the island for trail walking and stuff. And we have quite a few chanterelles in this area as well.
Nice, yeah. It's a multi-million-dollar industry here for wild picking. It's amazing how many chanterelles come out of Washington alone.
My neighbor kind of got me into foraging, and I've only gone a couple times. And he had a pocket knife with like a brush on the other side of it, so you just slice it at the base and brush off the dirt, and then you take it to this really fancy restaurant and trade it for meals, both at the golf course and the Harbor House public pub.
Yeah, they're a hot item if you know where to find them.
Yeah, it's amazing how much the price varies, though. That's what kind of got me. Like one day he'd get $10 from a chef per pound, and then other days it'd be 60. And it varied so much depending on the season. And tell me some of the conditions that a chanterelle needs.
Well, chanterelles are a mycorrhizal. Ray, you want to answer? You know more. Okay. I'm talking a lot here. But chanterelles they're a mycorrhizal variety that have the symbiotic relationship with the Doug firs, hemlocks, a lot of the evergreens up here, and some of the brush nearby those firs to help out. So soil conditions and rain, basically. So we just live in an amazing region with a diversity of forest life, and you'll only find them generally around 15 to 45-year-old Doug firs or older, and then the conditions have to be right through like September and October. If we don't get enough rain, we've seen those prices go up considerably when people are expecting thousands of pounds in September and October, and there's only hundreds of pounds. So the prices will fluctuate drastically because of the seasonal availability of those mushrooms. So,
and tell me all the different mediums different mushrooms need. Not all of them, but a few of them, the ones that we would recognize. I know there's just hundreds upon hundreds of mushrooms, and a lot of people don't get past creminis.
Yeah.
So I know that certain mushrooms are produced on trees. Some are in the ground. Some are in the ocean. Some need to be from burned forest areas. I believe that's morels that like to grow in that condition. Chanterelles usually grow in the fall when it rains, and then some sunshine immediately comes after. Correct?
Yeah, they like a rain and then a warming. Not too much. They're in the forest generally without a lot of direct sunlight. Most mushrooms don't want direct sunlight, but they like that back and forth of wet to warm, and then cold temperatures fluctuate. We'll fluctuate 30 degrees sometimes from morning to night in the fall. And mushrooms a lot of times like that kind of initiates them into fruiting, and then the warmth brings them out even more to expand. So yeah, there's all kinds of different substrates, like the cremini that you were talking about. That's the button mushroom. And ironically, all the buttons are basically the same. You have the portobello, which is the overmature cremini, which is the brown button mushroom. And then the white buttons are the same. They could be growing portobellos that are white as well. They just choose to use the brown button. So it's a way for them to market their mushrooms in a way that made them a little different, even though they were all basically the same. And they like manures, so they're a coprotrophic mushroom. Manure lovers. There's other types of manure lovers out there. Grass. There's grass-loving species. You'll find them in grass generally. There's also the wood lovers. They're the saprotrophs. They like dead or decaying wood. So the oysters, lion's mane, and shiitakes primarily grow on wood. People ask all the time down here in Thurston County why it stinks so bad when they go by Lacey, and it's the button mushroom farm there, and they're composting chicken manure and straw together with gypsum, pasteurizing that, and then
What's
putting it into
gypsum?
their houses. So calcium carbonate.
And how do you
It's just
derive that?
it's
Compound?
mined. It's mined as a mineral. It's in the cement industry or drywall as well.
Hmm.
It
So,
just it helps keep the pH right and breaks up the moisture content so it doesn't get clumpy. So
and
yeah,
you
those are
do,
the basic three substrates that people use to cultivate mushrooms.
and you have gardens, and then you have foraging side, and then you have spore development all going on, correct?
Spores are, yeah, that's a common question. How do we start the cultures basically? What do we start with? The spore is your basic seed of the mushroom, but there's so much genetic variability in the spore that we take a direct tissue culture out of a fresh mushroom. So you can literally just peel a mushroom open, take a scalpel, take a little piece out of the very inner part that hasn't touched the outside air and put it in a petri dish. You've now taken a clone of that direct mushroom you want to grow. Takes a series of making sure that is a really aggressive line that you picked out. And then you'll eventually get a fruiting variety off your culture. And we keep those in test tubes for long-term storage and refrigeration for about 5 years. And every year we can go back to that test tube, take a little slice off that first generation that was right off the actual mushroom, put that in a petri dish, and then grow that out to go onto grain. The grain goes onto the other wood substrates, and then that produces a mushroom. So it's a three-step process generally to start from culture to the final sawdust to the final mushroom.
So you got a area that's petri dishes, and you're pipetting and slicing cells up and stuff like that. Or like,
Really similar, yeah. Basic sterile laboratory where we do all of our work in a sterile lab because molds and bacteria grow so fast. Our fungi need 6 to 7 days to really leap off and be able to protect themselves from those contaminations. So we have to work in a sterile environment. And that's kind of what keeps people from doing it. But there's other ways through our workshops, you don't have to have a laboratory necessarily. You can buy spawn from people, producers, and then have an outdoor setup or a less sterile environment to grow mushrooms from there as well.
all right, Kaelin, I'm going to bring you in because you're sitting there.
Ria.
Ria,
Yeah, that's okay.
you got the last
I
name.
had an art teacher that always thought my last name should be my first name. So.
Yeah, so you get it. I apologize.
Oh, that's great.
What kind of mediums and where do you get them? Like your compost, your manure, your sawdust, stuff like that. I had a friend that thought that he could take all the coffee grounds from Starbucks and make oyster mushrooms. And he wrote an article about it, but he never followed through. One, is that factually true that you can do that with coffee grounds? And secondly, where are some of your supply chain coming from for the ingredients that you have to grow the mushrooms in?
Yeah, we're really lucky in living in Thurston County. There's a lot of agricultural waste products that happen here. So we use organic sawdust to grow a lot of our wood-loving mushrooms. So it's already mimicking the decaying process. And we have access to manure if we need that source with dairy farmers that are around that love it for you to come up and pick up waste that they have to deal with anyway. So, it helps them out as well. And our agar is sourced, it's a seaweed based product and you can get that online. And as far as those medias go, there's all kinds of recipes to make media to grow different mushrooms in, there's selectability but those are our main sources of how we get our substrates.
And grain as well.
And grain, we have some local grain growers. So our grains that we grow on are usually sourced fairly close to our farm. And if you don't have a farm nearby, you can find a food co-op or potentially small urban farming stores can help out with those things. We've seen that. And coffee grounds, you can grow great oyster crops on coffee grounds. And that is definitely got a coffee shop that'll be willing to give you their grounds, it's definitely a fun way to use them as recycling a waste product to grow food at home.
Awesome. Yeah. So do you use coffee grounds yourself at all?
We don't.
In workshops, we've shown the process of it.
Yeah, but as far as the scale of it for us, it just doesn't make sense because we're using so much that we can't recycle enough grounds. So we leave that industry for somebody else. And lots of people take it for their gardens and mix it in their compost. Coffee grounds.
I do. They're great
awesome.
for tomatoes.
Yeah.
So they have a big bag each day with the filters and the grounds that you can take for recomposting here on the island from all the coffee shops. So,
yeah, we're starting to see that a lot more. So even here in Olympia, we see it when we're out. Well, in the past, when we've been out and traveling, it's fun to pop in a coffee shop and you're like, oh, they're giving their grounds away. It's just super neat. So
having an organic farm, what's your family stance on GMO?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
We're not technically certified organic. We're in the process of being certified organic, but we had a close relationship with our customers, being at the farmers market, being through CSA. Mm-hmm. And we didn't feel like we needed to certify ourselves because we could show them right off the bat what we were doing. So we chose not to. There's a lot of farms out there that are like that. Mm-hmm. But GMO too is a whole nother ball of wax, ethically and philosophically, GMO is, since we started agriculture as a civilization, that's basically GMO in our opinion. Right. But we started agriculture cultivating and manipulating nature to be producers for us, so the yields would be higher. So there's different ways to look at it, and you can, I think Ria has a good.
I think after taking multiple genetics classes at a university level, going on to get my doctorate, hopefully, learning about genetically modified organisms isn't so much the problem, because we couldn't really do things with crops that in places like Africa that's extremely drought ridden, we can tech out crops that could actually feed a nation of people who are starving. The hard part is when we get agricultural companies in it uploading, their pesticides and fungicides and chemicals that don't belong in a crop, that are devastating some soil lands and agricultural, uniqueness. Is the diversity gets lessened. So nature mimics genetically modified how we think about it. And I think if we worked around maybe a bigger understanding of reducing pesticides, not creating crops that could feed a nation. That's kind of where I look at it, of having to have been a little bit more open, because I used to just be very averse to genetically modified anything. And when I learned about more of it on a level of, well, why are we doing this? Well, number one, we want to reduce some resource, but number two, we could really impact places. And so on a grand level to help people out. So it took a long time for me to even be able to verbalize it in those words. And I that's just kind of where I come from now. And there's definitely like a two edge to that coin for me, because one side is just really horrible, and another side could be really, really amazing. So I think it's a slippery slope with GMO, and it definitely needs to cultivate more mindfulness around what we're doing with it. Because if us humans are flipping the script on seeds, then I think we should be held accountable for it in better benefit instead of destructive pattern.
Very well said, Ria.
Thank you.
Hey, so I'm kind of close to Olympic Forest out here, and there's about an hour drive. There's this little city called Chimicum, and I'm actually wearing this hat from the Chimicum corner store, which is all locally grown. I mean, the farms are right across the street. And every Saturday they have a farmer's market, much like the island does here. But they have these incredible mushroom packs. You can either get them in large plastic bags, or these trays, and they look like, everything a baby would throw up.
Uh-huh.
What's in that?
Well, it depends on the variety, but most of them are sawdust based.
Mm-hmm.
Mycelium. The mycelium should look white, from
Yeah,
depending on the
slimy,
variety. So,
right?
yeah. Shiitakes will turn brown as they age and they look really weird. They'll start to bubble out. We call it popcorning. The mycelium will get these warts on them and they turn brown. They start to have this wet exudate that they exude. And so it can look weird to people. Fungus in general is kind of we still have a stigma here in the US about fungi in general, but we're definitely wanting to learn more. And it's mostly just white fungus for the most part, and that's a good thing. But it's hard. It takes a trained eye to see bacteria or smell it and the other contaminations that people would think that that's probably what it is and not the fungus. So,
And it's
and
funny.
also that reminds me of something that a lot of people ask about. Could other mushrooms grow out of that same thing? And generally not. Once that particular mushroom grows through that substrate, it's only going to fruit that mushroom. So that's another thing to keep in mind as consumers.
In a cultivated bag.
In a cultivated bag as well.
If you're doing a cultivated log, with a log culture, plugging using dowel is going to grow shiitake, which is mostly common. Sometimes it'll fruit turkey tail because it's not that you plugged it with turkey tail, just the turkey tail beat out the shiitake in a natural setting. And turkey tail's a variety that's around a lot in the spored world out in nature. So,
And they're edible?
They are more like tea. You might want to make tea out of them. You're not so much going to cook them and just eat them that way. It's super medicinal. Their medicinal qualities are pretty off the chart for a lot of cancers and tumor reducing. And
Interesting.
There's a lot of Chinese medicine based around turkey tail, and lots of oncologists now recommending it to anyone with breast cancer. So
that's good to know.
Yeah, it's definitely out there. So it's a wonderful species. So sometimes you see that when you are trying to force something to grow something, the natural world can overtake it a little bit. But
nobody beats Mother Nature.
Culture. Yeah.
And so let's pivot to so I'm trying to think about how my mushroom mind went, but I started taking reishi tincture for my pancreas and overall health. What are some of the health benefits from certain varieties of mushrooms that you would suggest for the listeners that you should incorporate in your, not diet, but your eating habits? I don't like that word diet. I fluctuate myself.
Yeah.
You should just add all mushrooms in your diet. Like whatever, if you have an ailment, we have Google today. You can Google most mushroom layman's names like lion's mane or shiitake and put in medicinal qualities. And most of that information that pops up isn't falsified because there's a lot of backing behind it. I would say if anybody is concerned about their whole food nutrition of adding whatever mushroom you like, just eat it, because there will be things like lion's mane has brain qualities and neural growth issues and decreases nerve pain for some people. Shiitake is a great blood cleaner. So if you have cholesterol issues, you're dealing with maybe some sodium regulation problems too around your heart, you can add shiitakes into your diet and your food intake, and it can actually help reduce and quell some of those problems. Oyster mushrooms, also another fabulous mushroom for all general things, from things I've read about nail growth to, just feeling radiant like they look. So,
go ahead.
Just some, like I have kind of a top 10, I think. I think lion's mane for sure. That's been super popular online.
Okay, before we get further in your top 10, lion's mane is a beautiful mushroom in my mind, and I've just found it out because it's in my mud water. I see it in the grocery store now. I recognize it. How do I cook it? or do I cook it? How do I know certain mushrooms are better in certain situations.
Yeah, lion's
Like
mane.
morels, I want to go to a French restaurant and have them, reduced and beautified.
Porcinis, yeah.
Yeah.
Lion's mane are usually in a ball, like a baseball or a softball shape. I like to slice them into wafers, or you can actually dice them like an onion, get them into little cubes. There's little icicle kind of teeth on the outside. It's a
Yeah.
tooth fungus. So those will kind of just break off and go into the rest of the meal. But they have a kind of a crab or a lobster like texture to them. And they really soak up the flavors that you add to them, but they have a very nice mild mushroom earthy flavor as well. So I'm off dairy myself. Butter makes anything taste good, basically,
Yeah.
But I like, coconut oil and
Yeah.
cooking them in a coconut oil, maybe getting them crispy. You could barbecue them, basically. You could just
That's my favorite.
wafer them into nice little, 1/2 inch or 1 inch wafers
Steaks,
and
yeah.
barbecue them, marinate them before you barbecue them and whatever you like.
Yeah, I like to grill the portobellos.
Yeah.
I don't cut my hericium when I barbecue them. I just put those suckers on in their puffball state and just roll them around and get them. Hey man, that is the best way. We've grown lion's mane for a while now, and I think I started barbecuing that way about 1.5 years ago. So it's definitely my new favorite way to eat lion's mane, is just slow and low on the grill, like you're doing ribs or something. Just
nice.
Yeah.
I'm currently fasting right now, so you're getting me hungry.
Oh yeah.
Sounds good.
But yeah, I have MCT oil in the mud water, and that's I believe a coconut derivative that kind of sweetens it a bit. But I'm off dairy as well, except I'm not completely off anything. I'm what I used to label myself as a pescatarian, but now I'm a flexitarian. I'm flexible. I'll eat a cow. I'll drink a glass of chocolate milk here and there, but for the most part, I stay away from it and enjoy the coconut and almond milk. But then you have this whole problem of almond harvesting and how much water it takes. And, once one superfood goes off, it just gets depleted and it causes a lot of wrecks in a lot of ways.
Definitely.
It's hard
Oat milk is my new favorite. Like oat milk. Oats are easy to raise. Yeah.
That's good for your body as well. So back to your top 10, lion's mane. Number 10.
Yeah. Oh, well, medicinally, you can find these in all sorts of different products. So lion's mane, reishi, of course. There's so many different reishis. There's wild reishi that are here in the wild.
Is reishi like the half moon that's attached to a tree?
Yeah,
really hard.
The conch mushrooms or the shelf mushrooms. Yeah.
How do you harvest those?
You can literally just take the shelf and just peel it off the bark of the tree. The tree's already dying or on its way out. And there's certain varieties that you want to be aware of. There's a red listed variety called agarikon. These are all polypore mushrooms, the woody conch mushrooms that you find on the sides of dead trees, usually Doug firs or evergreens. And the agarikon is on my top 10 as well. It's instead of the fruit body, we grow mycelium, the fungus, the white stuff, and then grow that on a substrate and then tincture that. Or you can grind it up into a powder and put that into whatever. Mm-hmm. So there's ways that you can grow the polypore just for the mycelium to then extract the medicine instead of it being from the fruit body, which is too woody to eat, basically. So reishis are too woody to eat as well. So it's generally hot water extraction, or they grow the mycelium out on a grain and they'll make a powder out of that later on and put that into products. So
no wonder I usually get it in liquid form. Good to
know. Yeah.
What else you got for me there, Christian?
Yeah, the polypores are amazing. Pretty much all polypores I would highly recommend as a medicinal. There's the turkey tail, agarikon, reishi, chaga.
Chaga's in the mud water. I like that.
Chaga's in the mud water.
What does a chaga mushroom look like? I have yet to see what that looks like or look it up.
Chaga, yeah, it's a parasitic fungi that grows usually in Canada, Alaska, and the Northeast because it's on birch trees.
Mm.
And it's like a black cancerous growth coming off the birch trees with a yellow core, golden core.
It's meant
It's also one of those superfoods that's being over harvested, in my opinion, but there's quite a bit out there. What's happening is the outer sporulation isn't there anymore because people cut it off the tree. It's still in the tree and it'll keep growing from that tree for up to 30 or 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
But as we harvest it, there's less and less sporulation happening, and so it's not as diverse.
Let's talk about that for a second. When I go to harvest a mushroom that I forage, is it important for me to shake it, leave the root in there, cut it at a certain point, or pluck it?
It's different for every species, really. There's certain species that you pluck right out of the ground. The porcinis generally are like that, the matsutakis. The chanterelles people will cut because there's little tiny mushrooms usually attached to that bigger mushroom. If you were to pull a whole piece out, you're not guaranteed any more mushrooms from that spot. So seasoned pickers will always carry a knife with them so that they can cut the chanterelles out rather than pick them out.
All right. Good job, Mike Johnson, out there with your pocket knife, getting those chanterelles for us.
Yeah.
Hey,
so yeah, just knowing your mushrooms and which ones. It's pretty basic like that. Yeah.
What kind of roadblocks did you have in your supply chain during the pandemic? The CSA that's near my garden is there's a refrigerator in a barn and a couple crates, and it wouldn't have disrupted the supply chain whatsoever because you just go in the barn, grab your bundle of vegetables or whatnot, and then go. You're not going to interact with any people. What kind of issues did you guys have over the last year and a half or so?
Well, we have actually changed our whole farm over the last year. We've kind of taken a break from CSA farming and farmers markets to renegotiate the future of our farm to be in the nutraceutical market, actually, where we want to produce medicine. We've been producing food for 15 years, and we've always known that medicine is super important too. Mm-hmm. And we're launching the company now to produce nutraceuticals, basically. So that's our new thing. But as far as supply chains, I know that sawdust was actually having a little issue there. People up in Bellingham, or not Bellingham, but up north of Seattle were actually coming down here to get sawdust for their operations because the mills were working a little differently. I know that there has been a little bit of higher prices happening because of shipping and weather-related things that are happening as well. So yeah, the pandemic has definitely caused a little snafu in different industries that cause ripples in other industries, basically. But I think for the most part, farming has continued to be fairly strong. There's
people can be outdoors. Big industrial farming.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the poultry business, and the dairy. I wouldn't want to be in that
local
right now.
Farming that's smaller for sure hasn't been hurt quite like the industrial.
Ria, I think you have some thoughts. I feel your
head. I do. I was going to say our companion farmers that we farmed with, where we pushed our mushrooms through for a decade, they said last year when everything was in the height of the pandemic, they couldn't provide enough food for the people who kept calling and emailing, trying to get a new subscription to their farm. They oversold. They usually always overgrow, which is nice for reasons. And they do a lot of gleaner work. And last year they couldn't allow the gleaners to come to provide food for the food bank because their subscription overflowed beyond what they had projected for. So in some ways, their small farm, got boosted because it did drive people to start thinking differently of where am I going to get really good food right now, as we saw things in the grocery store really change. And
grow your own kits. People were home, and I know grow your own mushroom kits were huge over the last year.
And you guys sell those, right?
Yeah.
We have in the past.
Yeah.
We didn't take advantage of the pandemic situation. like other farms did.
We made a lot of
But,
tincture during the
yeah.
pandemic is what we did. And I think the only snafu that I can remember we really ran into was a lack of running it out of alcohol to extract with.
Yeah.
And that was the pinch for us when I think about what we did make or what became a shortage in supply was, you know, there was no extracting alcohols. So in that moment, Christian and I looked at each other and went, well, let's start working with how do we get away from extracting alcohols? And we know all these other ideas. And so it kind of just gave us some space to think about using water differently and hot and cold extracts and looking at even the industry of ethanol extractions into different sources of how do we make nutraceutical products that are even going to lessen the burden on our systems. And so that's actually where we're all at right now. So just super exciting. So
yeah, I think the pandemic, the one thing that I'm going to get out of it is, you know, a sense of what's important, what's not. And, you know, with our relationship with China and human rights and importing and exporting, it's more important than ever to support the community that you're in and buy and shop and grow where you live, you know.
Oh man, know your farmer, know your food. Yeah, know that footprint. I hope to see that ripple effect continue on as the world starts to return to something, and we have an opportunity to make it what we want. So,
yeah, I mean, that was my goal last year before the pandemic was sourcing. Just one word, sourcing. Do I know where this came from? Is it child labor? Is it slave labor? Is it human rights violations? Is it non-GMO, GMO, who cares, whatever. But I should be able to know that. It's one of my biggest pet peeves is farm salmon. When I go to a restaurant, I should know where to trace where that fish came from, no matter what the fish is. And there's a lot of disguise in restaurateurs, you know, charging a lot for some farm salmon. But then I have a friend who is a kelp farmer in Alaska, in Ketchikan. He has about 180 acres of sea where he grows kelp on lines. And he went out to lunch with me. He's like, hey, about 80% of the restaurant industry uses farmed salmon. And then we had some issues out here. We had Atlantic salmon being grown in pens in the tribal area. And then the pen broke out. And I also feel like the fish are stuck, you know, in a kind of a underground box of their own feces, you know, where they're just swimming around in that, and it's just constant, and it's not natural in any way. So I'd like to see that I can trace that fish. And Proper Fish is out here, a fish and chip place, and you know, you can know exactly what water, what day that fish was caught. You know, and it's up there every day. Like, hey, caught this cod at so and so. You know, got it through the Pike Place Market at 6 a.m. this morning. It's on your plate at 11. You know, I like that.
That's cool.
I like that too. I'd spend my money there any day of the week. Yeah.
I think there's a push in grocery stores as well to have barcodes that have source digital information built into the product in the future. We'll see that more and more in grocery stores. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that they're changing. This one product that I invested in called Genius Juice, which is a whole coconut product where they use the husks for natural energy. They blend the meat of the coconut with the water and add things that are like anti-inflammatories like turmeric or cinnamon, or the one that I like is cacao. And it's just 3 ingredients. And the whole process is earth friendly. So I'm drinking it every day. I put some money in it, and I'm proud when I hold that bottle around. It's kind of like is it a label there? Yeah, there's a label. So you should be drinking. So how many varieties would you say that you guys have grown, and how many have you kind of settled in on as what you want to do?
Yeah, I didn't ever finish my top 10. It was I was on to Maitake. Maitake is another amazing mushroom, both culinary and medicinal.
Yeah.
Helps killer T cell boost, white blood cell count, and it's
Wow.
just an amazingly fabulous mushroom. It's super meaty and the texture's amazing. We've got a dog knocking at the door.
I have a couple too, doing the same thing. So their squeak toy, it's driving me
Yeah.
nuts.
Cordyceps is another amazing mushroom.
Tell me about that, because that Cordyceps is in the mud water as well.
Yeah, there's two different varieties that you'll find on market. There's the sinensis, which is the fruit body of sinensis cordyceps is actually in a caterpillar larvae grown in the Tibetan region in China, and it is also over harvested. It's one of the most expensive mushrooms next to truffles, and it's because of its scarcity now and the way they have to harvest it. Most medicinal products online will have sinensis in the mycelial form instead of it being the fruit body form. That's why it doesn't cost so much. And then there's the militaris, which is kind of a coral colored mushroom, and it looks like a little piece of coral basically.
Yeah.
And they're growing the fruit bodies of that, the mushroom, and then powderizing that or putting it into supplements. So those are amazing adaptogenic mushroom. Like it helps athletes recover. It also helps oxygenate the blood, so you have more stamina. Runners and other athletes, or just people that need more energy without caffeine and other products, will find benefit with cordyceps for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy drinking this mud water that I have a sustainability in my body now. I've been off coffee for 2 months, and it's not the high, low crash, give me a shot in the arm type of thing. Even though I wasn't a heavy coffee drinker at all, I like the sustainability of the mushroom tea in the morning.
Yeah, cordyceps is one of those mushrooms that I can feel it, after. It's a slow medicine, so you're not going to feel it instantly, but yeah, over 2 weeks of taking it consistently, if you're not a morning person, you'll see the difference.
Definitely.
Yeah, it definitely works.
So you said truffles. I didn't I'm sorry if I cut you off there, and you can finish your thought if you like.
No, that's fine.
So I don't really think of truffles as a mushroom. I do think of it as something that I don't need on my tater tots or French fries at a restaurant. And I always see this truffle oil on this, truffles on that, and then I was kind of interested that the pigs dug it up. But until right now, I didn't put two and two together that a truffle is a mushroom. What kind of health benefits does a truffle have? And is that super over harvest? Because I see truffle oil on just about everything.
Yeah, they harvest them here in the wild, right here in our backyard. We just found one the other day when we were taking a greenhouse out of the ground, and one popped right out of the ground. They're a symbiotic mushroom with the Doug firs and other trees like hazelnuts. So people have inoculated hazelnut filbert trees, root systems, and then planted those. And after 8 years, they're going to have truffles supposedly. So there is a cultivation and a wild variety that's being grown. There's black and white varieties. Some people think the European Italian truffles are better or have that consistency and the fragrance and the flavors that they're looking for. So they'll be a little more expensive than the US grown West Coast truffles. As far as medicinal qualities, I'm not so sure. I'm sure there are some, but it's more for a culinary benefit, where you're just at the end of whatever you're cooking, you just shave a little bit of truffle over the top. You're not really cooking the truffle. You have to cure the truffles as well after you pick them. There is a little bit of over harvesting as far as the way they harvest. If they're not using pigs or dogs that can smell them, people will go in with rakes and rake out huge swaths of forest floor in order to expose the roots and see the truffles easier. So that can be destructive as far as the ethical part of harvesting them out in the wild. But
tell me if you have any knowledge about mushrooms in the ocean, because I heard the largest mushroom is at the bottom of the ocean, basically. And you talk a lot about symbolicism, and how perhaps, the mushrooms and plants and trees all work in communication, fight disease, and try to cut off the disease by the one plant saying, I will pull back my root system away from you and die peacefully in Mother Nature. And you guys can move on with your lives. Um, being a vegan or a vegetarian and trying to wrap your head around broccoli crying or something when you harvest it, like killing
Yeah.
an animal, that's a
Yeah.
whole another set of problems. But I'm fascinated by the connection of mushrooms and other plants. And I was wondering if you knew anything about the connection of mushrooms in the ocean, because we're surrounded by the Pacific Ocean and
Yeah,
it's
right.
beautiful.
And this is where life came from, basically. In the early beginnings of the earth, we see that the algae and the fungi came out of the water and demineralized rock formations to make dirt to form more plant life on Earth. So these were uh, the early organisms that helped life evolve onto the land. So yeah, I met a mycologist at the International Medicinal Mushroom Conference in 2004 that went down in submarines just to do research on suboceanic fungi, which is just an amazing thing. You don't really think about it
Yeah.
that way, but that's where it all started. Yeah. And I think, I don't know enough, actually. It's not my specialty, but it's pretty amazing work that they're doing. And it's going to take our grandkids and their kids to figure out all the different mushrooms that we have here in this world, both in the ocean and on land. There's millions of species, basically. So we don't know them all, and it's going to take multiple
Yeah.
generations to find them.
It'll take a couple of Jacques Cousteaus to gather that stuff, right?
Yeah, it's exciting work.
There's definitely cataloging of aquatic fungi that's happening. I don't think it's happened as fast as terrestrial stuff because we live on land. So, but there is a whole new birth into the science world of like, let's go figure out what they're doing. The oxygenation factor of our planet, we think to, blue-green algae, kind of ancient stromatolites, that came out from the water and started absorbing the CO2 and making oxygen happen. So if we didn't have fungi in a eukaryotic split back in, time mass, we wouldn't know this earth as we know it today, and probably not exist. So the aquatic species, I think we're going to learn a bunch about because there's still a lot of unknowns there. And that's some exciting new work that's coming out.
Yeah, it sounds exciting and very fascinating to learn about. Ria, how do you feel about the future of farm to table?
Oh, yeah.
Restaurants.
Yeah, I don't think I think we're just scratching the surface. So I think it's going to definitely, especially in America, as it infiltrates more into the center of our country. Like I think our coastals do a little bit better with farm to table awareness. And I'm excited to see it like move into middle America where there's a lot of farms. And even though some are big, they should still be putting food into their local community. And so much is stored in silage and storage of what we're doing, and that goes to waste. So I'm hoping as, cycles change that we start to see more farm to table and from like nose to tail table work. That's where I'm really excited about every time I meet younger people who are interested in growing not just their own plants, but, their own animals, because I think if you're going to be a flexible eater, you should definitely raise your own animals at least once in your life and go through that process. I know every time I buy, an animal product in a grocery store, I definitely give a lot more thanks to the opportunity to buy it so conveniently. And I think that shift of the idea of convenience of our food, we're so removed from it, and we're so lucky in this country. So I'm looking forward to more farm to table, and slow food. I love the idea of slow food. So
define slow food for me.
So slow food is that idea of like the restaurants knowing the farmers, slowing it down out of mass production of big agricultural. And the slow food movement's been around for a little while now. So it is out there and online and in the media somewhat. But it's definitely the idea of, removing it from the big corporates into the local communities. Even if it's big farms helping smaller farms. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely into seeing some of those transitions happen.
Yeah, I have a friend he has a business, whiskey distillery in Australia, and we were talking about his relationship with farmers and how he gets his grains and hops and then turns around and after they've been deshelled and go through the process, he gives that to pig farmers. So right. Now instead of throwing away waste, it's going on another circle of life. And how important it is, and how he just respects how it's a circular, what would you call that, idea of, everybody helping everybody and the products returning back to earth in the end, which was kind of deep for a whiskey guy.
Yeah, I think about, in communing, community, living in these worlds we're in today, that's how we all got here, was somebody helped somebody who helped somebody else, who raised an animal that probably fed your family. So if we can, I grew up with the reduce, reuse, recycle. I'm one of those kids. So it's if we can reduce what we're doing, we can recycle it. And then how do we reuse it? That is I think kind of still a golden ticket to the future of regenerative work in our mindset, our communities of food producers, to the table, to people who, CSA is great because if you live in a big city and you don't have access to grow your own food, supporting your local farmer who's maybe just outside of your community is, I think, the next best thing you can do for yourself. Because I'm a big believer that your health is your ultimate wealth. Because if you're not healthy and trying to, thrive in the physical form that you're in, money in the bank doesn't matter because you're not well. And, life ceases to be vital at that point. You're not.
You have a vehicle that if you don't maintain it, it breaks down. So if you start thinking about your body like a car that you have to constantly, change the oil in.
I love the car analogy. I have asked people what kind of car do you think you are? And if whatever car you come up with, if you're not treating it it's the Ferris Bueller's Day Off in the garage and waxed and loved, then there's something wrong. And I think the wrongness is how much we've been removed away from the concept of food.
There's somebody that's local that has a great idea, and she's really fighting for different laws and such. But her idea is to bury people in a mushroom suit in a pine or fir box and let the mushrooms decompose the body, and then you become one with the earth, and having these natural burial sites, which are against the law in the majority of the United States.
Some states, yeah.
And the more I think about it, the more I'd like to put on a really fancy suit, get buried with mushroom spores all over it, like it's polka dotted or something, and just kind of be between two trees and go there.
There's a nonprofit in Seattle. I'm drawing a blank on their name. There's a nonprofit in Seattle that does a container recycling of the deceased body, and they use mushrooms and enzymes. And then you get two
Uncle Fred.
you get 2 cubic feet of soil that comes out of yourself instead of cremating. And what can happen, you can either get the soil back from the company after the process is done, or the soil is being donated to land preservation out on the peninsula, going into some old growth forest for restoration of the soil. So there are some companies in our state that are pushing that forward. So if if she's here in Washington or I don't know their name, but I know they're functioning. And it is in Seattle that's happening with that.
Yeah, well, if you come across it in the future, shoot me an email about it, okay?
I will.
So we should probably let you get back to the farm and the pets and your Sunday weekend. Can you tell me all the ways that you're deriving income and how people, is there tours of the farm? Is there mushroom kits? Is there tincture available? Is there mushrooms available? If I'm a restaurant, how do I hook up with you? Tell me how we can continue the love of mushroom conversation.
That's a great question. We're in the middle of huge construction happening right now, where we've teamed up with a wellness corporation where we will be vertically integrated, producing our own products in-house for for brain performance. Basically, it's the whole mission of the company is boosting brain function and helping our brains not only in immunity but our cognition, and there's all kinds of different avenues that we'll take. We're actually talking to other companies and probably going to be producing raw materials for their products as well as our own products. So it's really exciting times right now.
So you're going through a bit of a transitional period right now?
It's a huge transition, yeah.
Okay, I won't send hundreds of people down to the farm to bother you then.
Yeah, but soon we're super excited for that in the future, because that is our focus as well. We want to help bring it to the people, have a farm experience here for people that live in the city. They can come out to the farm in a rural setting, have a workshop, learn more about it, see the mushrooms firsthand. So we're all about that. We've always wanted to have agritourism. We live right on the Bountiful Byway, which is a Thurston County farm agritourism sponsored highway. So it's really exciting times where we'll definitely welcome everyone out to the farm once we're fully constructed and ready for that. But you could email us at provisionsmushrooms@gmail.com, and we'll try our best to get back to you. We do have tinctures, and that's about it for right now as far as what we can provide for people. Mm-hmm. But we can also refer them to other places if they have questions in that. So
awesome. And I would say I'm going to forecast out that this time next year we'll be having availability for farm tours and people to come out to see on how we've always taught, which is teaching people how to grow mushrooms for themselves every day, even if you have zero space. Mm-hmm. And then what we've accomplished and are working on, which is how do you scale? And if you want to scale, I mean, there's lots to talk about scaling a business in this realm, but having people come out to the farm. So my projection is by this time next year, we'll have more of that business up and running and the website redesigned, and the glamping sites will be finished so people can stay the weekend. Just, if you're traveling to come out to the farm, you want the experience. And it's great because we get to bring chefs out and, highlight the local food that we get to feel blessed with having. And we like to share that with everybody that we can. So
sorry.
Yeah, go
ahead. You just said glamping, and I would like you to explain that word to my wife if she ever listens to my podcast again.
Oh, nice.
The importance of glamping and not camping.
Oh, glamping. Yeah. Glamping is my style of going out into nature.
Glamorous camping.
Definitely, having a few amenities, like you can plug in your iPhone, you can still work remotely, even if you're having to, adjust your life on your small getaway. Some electricity, and having bathroom needs met are always nice. So glamping is definitely something that, people who come from the city, especially, aren't just always set up to flop their tent out and make it comfortable for them, wake up cranky the next day. I want my guests to wake up happy the next day, comfortable.
Yes. These guys aren't a sponsor, but I use them here on the island. Shout out to Pack Westy. They are a company that takes the Euro vans and transitions them into electric vehicles, and then you rent it with the whole glamping amenities inside the van. So when you guys open up on day one, I want to have an invite, and I want to pack some of those vans with Bainbridge Islanders and come out to the farm and spend the weekend. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I would love that. I want Pack Westies here on the farm. That seems like an amazing photo shoot to me. It's like,
Yeah.
I've had Westphalia since I was a kid.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So
Oh.
I'm ready to have a bunch of electric campers here. That sounds rad.
Well, I forget this lady's name, but I believe her name's Nora, and she's a professional photographer and also kind of runs the shop. So I'm sure we can get her out there to take some photos of people glamping on the farm and
Yes.
your whole process.
That sounds so
That'd be great.
awesome.
Let's
Thank
do
you.
it.
Well, we'll do that for sure.
Awesome. Well, it's really nice to meet you, Christian and Ria. I wish you nothing but success. This has been an interesting conversation, and hopefully I can have another conversation with you with even more questions, because you guys are I'm not trying to say you guys anymore. You guys are a wealth of knowledge and a great couple. And thank you for being on the Bystander.
Thanks for having us today.
Yeah, appreciate
All right.
it.
You guys can get a link to the affiliate site Mudwater in the show notes. Thanks again to Blue Canary Auto for sponsoring the show, and Helpline House, where you can also become a member on Patreon for $20, and half of that money monthly goes to the helpline. Once again, you've been listening to Provisions Mushroom Farm with Christian and Ria. That's it. Be kind. You guys are great. Thank you.